All right. Hello. It's a happy Tuesday. Um, what I want to show you today is I want to try just one more different sort of art movement and art style. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to offer you different ways of creating and generating ideas and different images. So already we looked at cubism, and we looked at like found images, like cut and paste and putting photocopies and things like that together, and magazine images. Now I just want to do a different approach. I want to talk about surrealism, and we'll talk. And again, I'm not trying to focus so much on surrealism, the movement, and it's an art history test, but I want to sort of set up the context for you to inspire you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a digital surrealistic images because surrealism works really well with our modern technology that we have. Okay, so first of all, I need to talk about surrealism and what it is and just set it up for you. Okay, so this guy is Sigmund Freud, and if you've taken like any social science class and done any psychology, you've heard of Sigmund Freud before, and he was little weird in his theories about the human mind. So, how this impacted art was just like we looked at cubism, we looked at the influence of the camera and film on changing art and how people see art and how people create art. Well, when psychology was sort of invented and we start to understand how the human mind works, that had a great influence on artists, and especially Sigmund Freud was a huge influence, and that's why we still talk about him today, whether you like his theories or not. We're not going to get too much into Sigmund Freud, but one of the things that the surrealists took away from Sigmund Freud was the study of the unconscious mind. So the kind of the state of mind that you're in when you're kind of like in this dream state. So like right now when I'm blabbing at you, you're kind of drifting off and daydreaming. That's kind of like your unconscious mind. So a lot of the surrealistic artists were inspired by this, particularly this guy. His name is Andre Breton, and he was really into this Sigmund Freud and his theories. And he actually wrote this manifesto of surrealism. And he was an artist himself. He was also like a medical student. He did lots of different stuff. So this manifesto had a huge impact on a group of artists that created art. So the idea that these particular artists were taking from Sigmund Freud was this sort of like dream analysis, this idea that things that happen in your dream are actually symbols of a greater reality, right? They tell us more about who we are and the world like around us. So going back to Sigmund Freud, if we look at this like symbol of an iceberg as a metaphor for the mind, you can see that most of our mind in Sigmund Freud's theories is unconscious. It means there's a lot of things that are going on that drive our behavior, that drive our thoughts, that drive how we understand the world that we aren't necessarily aware of. So these surrealist artists really jumped into studying the unconscious mind and ways to get to the unconscious mind. And so they painted things from their dreams. They even tried to put themselves in these unconscious states where they would, tap into that by, yes, using drugs and hypnosis and things like that. So you end up with some very strange art. So I want to talk about this first artist. His name is Rene Magritte. And so he did a series of works called The Treachery of Images. So he was a French artist. So he did this print of a pipe. But the title of the pipe is This Is Not a Pipe. So what he's sort of talking about here is like, why is he doing a painting of a pipe and saying this is not a pipe? Well, it's not an actual pipe, it's a painting of a pipe. So he's starting to question, well, what is reality, right? Is art reality? Are really what we put on paper, is that really a reflection of what is real? What is reality then? And sort of like questioning, in a lot of ways, they were sort of thinking of like the unconscious mind is revealing a deeper reality than the reality that we think we're experiencing. Like it gets really crazy. So he moves on to things like this. This is a really neat painting too. This was a commissioned portrait of somebody, and he titled it Not to Be Reproduced. And the idea is that, there's a man looking in a mirror, but he's not seeing his reflection. Again, you just see the back of his head. And he's talking about, again, how we perceive images, reflections, the original versus, just a reflection of something. What is the real person? How other people see you, how you see yourself, right? So there's a lot of, questioning through symbols and through metaphors about reality and who we are and how we understand the world. So it gets pretty deep, even though the images themselves don't necessarily have to be that complicated. This one's called Lovers, and again, it's talking about how two people, they're very intimate, right? They're kissing, right? But they've got these pieces of these cloths over top of their head, so they're not actually touching. So they're talking about, how two people can be so close, but then they're not really that close. How do they really see each other? It could be, even though they're a couple, they're still distinct in who they are on their own, right? So again, a lot of like symbols and metaphors. So think about like having a dream. If you I know you can do like dream analysis, and there's, used to be books, and you can look online now about like, if I dream that I'm flying, this is supposed to symbolize that this will happen, or this is, if I'm grinding my teeth, this means I'm going to come into money. I don't know if that's true, but different, different sort of ideas like that. What does it mean when I have all these weird dreams? So you've probably seen this one before, and this is a painting called The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali. And Salvador Dali is probably one of the most famous surrealist artists. And you've got to think, like at the time, not only is this psychology sort of getting really popular and the theories of Sigmund Freud and understanding the mind, and that's, impacting the way artists create. But you've got to think in the beginning of the 1900s, there's two world wars, there's depression, and there's other things happening all over the world that really just disrupts everything. So when, traditionally you would go out and you would do a landscape painting, the artist would sit there and do a painting of a beautiful landscape. Well, why would you want to do that when, you've just been through one or two wars, right? And your landscape is now decimated. So artists are tending to look inside a little bit more. So this painting, there's a lot of symbols. So it's very much like you could have this really weird dream. It feels like we're looking into Salvador Dali's dream. So we see three melting clocks, and they for him are symbols of like the past, present, and future, and they're melting, right? So it's not, it's talking about time, and time is, fluid and different, and can they coexist at the same time? And I mean, the idea when you're having a dream, time doesn't really exist, and it kind of shifts everything. But he's also got a fourth clock there that's turned upside down. It's the orange kind of pocket watch that's there, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's ants sort of like crawling over top of it, and it's kind of that idea perhaps of like decaying, and ants kind of eating away at the time, and that could be talking about, death. That weird sort of bone shape that's kind of floating in the front. Maybe that's a symbol of, Salvador Dali sleeping, right? He's got, this barren sort of landscape, and this is his olive tree, this dead olive tree. And normally, an olive tree is like a symbol of like knowledge, but it's dead. So is he talking about, like, do we really know what's going on? Do we really know what reality is? So all of these things are painted realistically, so it's believable. So as a traditional painter, he knows how to paint, he knows perspective, he knows how to do shading, he knows all of the rules of art, but putting it all together in this weird, irrational, impossible way, which is very much what like a dream would look like. So this artist is Frida Kahlo, and you've probably heard of her. She would have not necessarily considered herself a surrealistic artist. She would say she actually had a showing, and she met Andre Breton, the guy who wrote the Surrealistic Manifesto, and he said, "You're a surrealist." And she says, "I don't know if I am, but what I do like to paint is symbols of who I am." Right? So again, we're looking at like different symbols that have different meanings, that talk about, who you are, understanding the world. It can be metaphors for certain things. Now, this way of working, even though perhaps nowadays we're not so influenced perhaps by, Sigmund Freud and his theories, maybe we believe in them, maybe we don't, but the idea of cutting and pasting and putting together these weird images really works well today in not just our magazine and cut and paste society, which which you just kind of did with your last assignment, but digitally we can do that really, really easy with like Photoshop, and then we're going to use Canva and things like that. A lot of the stuff we can, in modern times, we can incorporate photography and, digital media and film, and we can do a lot of really neat things playing with all these digital tools. And again, all of these then can be transformed into paintings if we wanted to bring them back to traditional pieces. But the idea of using these different tools, of using cameras and digital tools and films, really sort of like expands the way that we create stuff. And so here's a few examples, and I apologize, I don't have the artist, but just of contemporary, like recent surrealistic paintings that are happening right now, right? And so with the aid of photography and digital media, we can manipulate then the image and the space and everything and make it look like it's convincing, right? So again, another really cool idea. Just again, we can talk a lot about who we are, different metaphors and different symbols that mean different things, and all of them sort of make us feel uneasy because they're irrational. In reality, this couldn't happen, right? But this dreamlike and imaginary sort of, world sort of comes to. So we're going to try working in this way. So I hope that I've sort of inspired you so you understand what surrealism can be. And then I'm going to teach you how to do this digitally. So this is another tool in your toolbox when we approach any sort of project. So whether you want to go like sketching ways or tearing up images, whether you want to do it digitally, these are just different options. And I was thinking that surrealism was a really neat way to quite a sort of like get into this making art. Okay, so next is a really quick video, and I want to talk about Canva and how to get Canva and how we're going to use it. So you're going to watch the next video really, really quick.